The Great Crusade, a monumental chapter in the history of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, stands as one of humanity's most ambitious undertakings. A campaign born from the dream of reuniting a fractured galaxy under the banner of the Emperor of Mankind. This era, steeped in myth and legend, marked the zenith of human potential and the tragic seeds of its eventual decline. It was a time when the Imperium of Man first forged its identity, built on the ruins of the Age of Strife, driven by an unrelenting desire to reclaim humanity's lost glory. The galaxy, in the wake of the Age of Strife, was a place of despair. Human colonies, once part of a grand interstellar empire, had become isolated, stranded amid the cruel tides of warp storms and the insidious whispers of chaos. Technology, the lifeblood of human civilization, had been lost or corrupted in many corners of the galaxy, leaving once prosperous worlds to descend into barbarism. Warbands of Xenos marauders, ancient alien empires, and petty human warlords thrived in this chaotic void, preying upon the weak. For 10 millennia, the galaxy had known only darkness. From this chaos arose a figure of unparalleled might and vision, the Emperor of Mankind. A being of enigmatic origin and immense power, the Emperor had watched over humanity for thousands of years, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal himself. With the warp storms receding and the stars aligning, he set forth his grand plan to reunite the scattered remnants of humanity and establish a new order. The Imperium would not merely be a political state. It would be the salvation of humankind, free from superstition, ignorance, and Xenos domination. The Great Crusade began as a flame of hope in a galaxy shrouded in shadow. Spearheaded by the Emperor, its primary goal was the unification of humanity under the imperial truth, a doctrine that rejected the worship of gods and emphasized reason, science, and the potential of mankind. This ideology was not merely a means of governance, but a shield against the insidious influences of the warp. The Emperor knew that the success of this mission required more than ideology. It demanded warriors, technology, and leadership capable of confronting the galaxy's myriad threats. To achieve this, the Emperor unleashed his greatest creation, the Primarchs, 20 genetically engineered superhuman sons designed to lead the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines. Each Primarch was a reflection of the Emperor's own genius, endowed with unparalleled martial prowess, strategic brilliance, and a fragment of his divine purpose. Though the Primarchs were scattered across the galaxy by the machinations of chaos, the Emperor reclaimed them one by one, assigning each the task of leading a legion of Astartes to conquer and unify the stars. The Great Crusade was not merely a military campaign, but a vision of a brighter future, a galaxy free of the chains of ignorance, fear, and tyranny. Humanity would stand united, master of its own destiny. However, as the Emperor's fleet set forth from Terra, the ideals of unity and reason soon collided with the harsh realities of war and conquest. The galaxy was vast, its denizens many, and the road to unity was paved with blood, betrayal, and sacrifice. For over 2 centuries, the Imperium expanded at an unprecedented pace. Systems were brought to heel, Xenos were exterminated or subjugated, and lost colonies were reclaimed. Yet, as the Crusade grew in scale and complexity, so too did the challenges. The unity the Emperor sought was not always achieved through diplomacy or reason. Entire worlds were burned to ash for refusing compliance, and some foes, such as the ancient Eldari or the brutish Orcs, proved maddeningly resilient. Amid the triumphs of the Great Crusade, there was also an undercurrent of tension. The Emperor's mysterious nature and his departure to Terra, midway through the campaign, sowed seeds of doubt and division among the Primarchs and their legions. While the Emperor toiled on a secret project to secure humanity's future, the burden of leadership fell to his sons, whose ambitions, flaws, and rivalries would shape the destiny of the Imperium in unforeseen ways. The Great Crusade was the embodiment of human potential and the harbinger of its greatest tragedies. Its story is not one of unblemished heroism, but a tapestry woven with glory and hubris, loyalty and betrayal, vision and myopia. To understand the Imperium of man and the galaxy it sought to rule, one must first understand the Great Crusade, a dream that sought to reunite the stars and left the galaxy forever scarred. As the drums of war echoed across the void, heroes and villains alike were forged in the crucible of this unprecedented campaign. This is their story, a tale of conquest, ambition, and the fragile nature of unity. It is here, in the fires of the Great Crusade, that the fate of humanity was forever altered. The Great Crusade was defined by the remarkable individuals and factions that shaped its course, each bringing unique strengths, ambitions, and flaws to the monumental task of uniting the galaxy under the banner of the Imperium. At its heart stood the Emperor of Mankind, an enigmatic figure of godlike power whose vision transcended the mortal concerns of his time. His charisma, intellect, and unparalleled psychic abilities made him the ultimate architect of humanity's destiny. However, the Emperor's dream could not have materialized without those who fought in his name and carried his ideals, whether by choice, duty, or design. The Primarchs, the Emperor's 20 genetically engineered sons, were the pivotal figures of the Crusade. Each Primarch was unique, embodying a facet of the Emperor's genius and vision. Rediscovered one by one as the Crusade progressed, they became the commanders of the Legion Astartes, the superhuman space marine legions. Leman Russ, the feral warrior of Fenris, exemplified martial ferocity and loyalty. Robert Guilliman, the statesman of Ultramar, brought order and efficient governance. Horus Lupercal, the first and favored son, was a charismatic leader who inspired fierce devotion. Yet each Primarch also carried flaws, from Angron's uncontrollable rage to Perturabo's bitter resentment, which would later sow seeds of discord. Supporting the Primarchs were the Legiones Astartes, the Emperor's superhuman warriors. These genetically enhanced soldiers were the embodiment of strength, discipline, and fearlessness. Each legion reflected the character of its Primarch, creating a mosaic of tactical doctrines and combat styles. The Ultramarines emphasized adaptability and logistics, while the World Eaters thrived on brutal close combat. The adeptus Astartes were the spearhead of the Crusade, leading the charge into uncharted territories and annihilating any who opposed the Emperor's will. Beyond the Primarchs and their legions, the Mechanicum of Mars played a crucial role in the Great Crusade. This ancient techno-religious order provided the Imperium with the technological means to wage war on a galactic scale. The Mechanicum's forge worlds churned out vast fleets of starships, weapons, and war machines, including the towering Titans. Bound to the Imperium through the Treaty of Olympus, the Mechanicum operated as a semi-autonomous entity, driven by its own obsessions with arcane technologies and the machine god. Their symbiotic yet uneasy alliance with the Emperor highlighted the complexities of uniting disparate human factions. The Imperial Army, though often overshadowed by the Space Marines, was an essential force during the Crusade. Comprised of countless human soldiers, support personnel, and auxiliary units, the Imperial Army provided the sheer numbers needed to secure and hold conquered territories. They were the backbone of the Imperium's expansion, tasked with maintaining order on compliant worlds and defending against rebellion or Xenos incursions. Their courage, though often overlooked, was a testament to the resilience of humanity in the face of unimaginable horrors. The Crusade also encountered countless enemies, each a key player in their own right. The Orcs, driven by unrelenting aggression, presented a constant and pervasive threat, while the Ealdari sought to preserve the remnants of their fading empire. The Necrons, awakening from their eons-long slumber, posed a terrifying challenge with their ancient technology. Chaos, the most insidious of all adversaries, worked in the shadows, whispering corruption into the minds of men and Primarchs alike. These foes, with their varied motivations and strengths, ensured that every victory in the Crusade was hard-fought and fraught with peril. Among the key figures was Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's most trusted advisor and confidant. A mortal man of unparalleled intellect and willpower, Malcador served as the Emperor's right hand, orchestrating the logistics and governance required to sustain the Crusade. His contributions, though often overshadowed by the more visible deeds of the Primarchs, were vital to the Imperium's success. Malcador's role extended beyond mere administration. He was the bridge between the Emperor's divine aspirations and the practical realities of ruling a galaxy. The Great Crusade also relied on countless unsung heroes, iterators who spread the imperial truth, remembrancers who documented the campaign's achievements, and countless others who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Their efforts ensured that the Emperor's vision was not only realized on the battlefield, but also embedded in the hearts and minds of humanity. While they lacked the grandeur of the Primarchs or the power of the Astartes, their contributions were no less significant in shaping the future of the Imperium. Even within the Imperium itself, not all were united in purpose. Rogue traders, powerful individuals who operated on the fringes of imperial authority, pursued their own agendas while expanding the Imperium's reach. Navigators, with their unique ability to guide ships through the warp, were indispensable to the Crusade's logistics, but operated under their own ancient dynasties. The complexity of these relationships underscored the delicate balance required to maintain the unity of the Imperium. As the Great Crusade marched forward, it became increasingly clear that its key players were not simply tools of conquest, but embodiments of the Imperium's ideals, flaws, and contradictions. Together, they forged an empire unparalleled in scope and ambition, but their individual strengths and weaknesses would ultimately shape the destiny of humanity in ways even the Emperor could not foresee. The Great Crusade was not an event born in isolation, but the culmination of millennia of human struggle, triumph, and tragedy. Its foundations were laid in the aftermath of the Dark Age of technology, the Age of Strife, and the Emperor's clandestine preparations for humanity's resurgence. Each of these epics carved scars into the galaxy, setting the stage for the monumental campaign that would follow. The Dark Age of technology, often mythologized in imperial records, marked humanity's zenith before its fall. During this period, humanity flourished as a galactic civilization, mastering the secrets of advanced AI, warp travel, and terraforming. At its height, humanity's technological prowess allowed for the colonization of distant star systems, linked by stable warp routes and governed by a golden age of cooperation. Yet, this prosperity carried within it the seeds of its undoing. The development of abominable intelligences, self-aware machines unshackled from human oversight, proved catastrophic. These AI turned against their creators in a devastating rebellion, leading to the collapse of interstellar communication and governance. Worlds were severed from the collective, descending into isolation and chaos. The Age of Strife followed as warp storms swept across the galaxy, further severing humanity's colonies from one another. These storms, fueled by the raw energy of the warp, made interstellar travel nearly impossible. Many human worlds, left to fend for themselves, fell into barbarism or succumbed to Xenos invasions. Some retained fragments of their technological heritage, becoming independent powers, while others regressed entirely, losing even the memory of their once great civilization. On Terra, the cradle of humanity, the Age of Strife was particularly brutal. The planet devolved into a battleground of techno-barbarian warlords, each vying for dominance in a world stripped of unity and order. Amid this desolation, the Emperor of Mankind worked in secret, preparing for the moment when he could reveal himself and lead humanity back to the stars. His origins remain a mystery, even to those closest to him, but his unparalleled genius and psychic power set him apart as a being of immense potential. For thousands of years, the Emperor observed humanity's struggles, subtly influencing events to preserve its survival. As Terra fell into anarchy, the Emperor began to consolidate power, launching a campaign to unify the planet under his rule. This conquest, known as the Unification Wars, was brutal but decisive, laying the groundwork for the Great Crusade. During the Unification Wars, the Emperor deployed genetically engineered armies, including the precursor to the Space Marines, the Thunder Warriors. These soldiers, bred for strength and loyalty, were instrumental in defeating the warlords of Terra. However, their instability and unsuitability for the long-term vision of the Imperium led to their ultimate destruction, making way for the creation of the Legiones Astartes. With Terra unified, the Emperor turned his attention to the stars, but he knew that this would require more than brute force. It demanded a vision capable of rallying humanity and the infrastructure to sustain a galactic campaign. The Emperor's vision of the imperial truth, a doctrine of reason and progress, emerged as the ideological backbone of the Great Crusade. It rejected religion and superstition, viewing them as shackles that had kept humanity divided and vulnerable. The imperial truth sought to establish a galaxy-spanning civilization rooted in science, logic, and human potential. Yet the Emperor was not naive. He understood the threats posed by the warp and its malevolent entities. To shield humanity, he concealed the true nature of chaos, presenting the imperial truth as a bulwark against ignorance and manipulation. To implement his vision, the Emperor embarked on a monumental project, the creation of the Primarchs and the Legiones Astartes. The Primarchs, his 20 superhuman sons, were designed to embody the ideals of leadership, strength, and unity. They were scattered across the galaxy by the interference of chaos, but would later be reunited with the Emperor during the Crusade. Meanwhile, the Legiones Astartes were developed as the ultimate warriors, each Space Marine a genetically enhanced soldier loyal to the Imperium's cause. The Mechanicum of Mars was another key piece in the puzzle. While Terra had fallen into chaos, Mars had preserved much of its technological knowledge through its adherence to the cult Mechanicus. The Emperor forged an alliance with the Mechanicum, recognizing their value in supplying the Imperium's war machine. The Treaty of Olympus ensured the cooperation of the Mechanicum, granting the Emperor access to the tools and resources necessary for the Great Crusade, while allowing the Mechanicum to retain its distinct identity and traditions. The gradual calming of the warp storms, coinciding with the Emperor's rise to power, provided the final catalyst for the Great Crusade. With warp routes stabilizing, interstellar travel became viable once more. This reprieve was not a coincidence. The Emperor's psychic abilities and careful manipulation of the warp had likely played a role in creating this window of opportunity. Humanity, fractured and vulnerable, now had a chance to reclaim its lost glory, but only if it acted swiftly and decisively. The Great Crusade was thus the culmination of centuries of preparation and the convergence of numerous factors. The ruins of the Dark Age of technology, the chaos of the Age of Strife, the Emperor's unification of Terra, and the alliance with Mars. Each of these elements contributed to the foundation of an unprecedented campaign, one that would shape the destiny of the galaxy. Yet, beneath this grand vision lay the cracks of ambition, secrecy, and hubris that would eventually threaten to unravel all that was achieved. The timeline of the Great Crusade unfolds as a tapestry of triumph, struggle, and relentless expansion. Spanning over 2 centuries, it is marked by a series of defining events that showcase the power and ambition of the Imperium of Man. From the earliest conquests on the fringes of Sol to the dramatic reunification with the scattered Primarchs, each phase of the Crusade carried the Imperium closer to its ultimate goal, unifying humanity and reclaiming dominion over the stars. The campaign began on Terra, the cradle of humanity, with the Emperor consolidating his rule during the Unification Wars. Following his victory, he declared the dawn of the Great Crusade, mobilizing vast armies and fleets for galactic conquest. The Emperor's first steps were to secure the solar system, bringing Mars into an alliance that provided the Imperium with unparalleled technological capabilities. The treaty with the Mechanicum was a turning point, as the shipyards of Mars churned out warships and titans critical to the early expansion. Initial progress was swift. The Emperor's forces moved outward, reclaiming human-settled systems that had survived the age of strife in relative isolation. Some worlds, grateful for liberation, joined willingly, while others required military intervention to bring them into compliance. These early successes set the tone for the Crusade, an uncompromising campaign of assimilation where diplomacy was offered first, but refusal was met with annihilation. The Imperial Army and Legiones Astartes worked in concert, overwhelming opposition with superior tactics and technology. The rediscovery of the Primarchs marked a major milestone in the Crusade. The first of these legendary figures to be found was Horus, who became the Emperor's most trusted lieutenant and war master. Horus's charisma and military genius allowed the Emperor to delegate vast responsibilities, enabling the campaign to accelerate in scale. The subsequent discovery of Primarchs such as Robert Guilliman, Leman Russ, and Lion L. Johnson added momentum. Each brought unique qualities to their legions and the Crusade as a whole, shaping its strategic direction and forging a sense of unity, albeit fragile, among the Astartes. As the Crusade expanded, the Imperium encountered its first significant resistance. The Orcs, with their sprawling empires, proved to be a persistent and infuriating adversary. Entire campaigns were dedicated to exterminating their infestations, such as the Ullanor Crusade, which culminated in one of the most decisive victories of the era. During this campaign, Horus demonstrated unparalleled leadership, solidifying his position as War Master. The triumph over the Orcs was a testament to the Imperium's ability to confront overwhelming odds, but it also foreshadowed the cost of prolonged conflict. Xenos empires, such as the Aldari remnants and the ancient Necron tomb worlds, became increasingly common as the Crusade reached deeper into the galaxy. The Aldari, though a shadow of their former selves, fought fiercely to protect their remaining domains. Their hit-and-run tactics and psychic prowess posed significant challenges, forcing the Imperium to adapt its strategies. Similarly, encounters with Necron tomb worlds revealed horrifyingly advanced technologies that even the Mechanicum struggled to understand. These battles underscored the galaxy's danger and hinted at the limits of human supremacy. While the Crusade's military victories were numerous, its ideological mission was equally ambitious. The spread of the imperial truth sought to extinguish the remnants of religion and superstition on compliant worlds. Iterators, skilled orators trained to propagate the Emperor's philosophy, worked tirelessly to reshape the beliefs of newly conquered populations. However, not all were receptive to the imperial truth. Resistance to its imposition often led to rebellion, necessitating further military action to secure compliance. This dual approach of conquest and indoctrination highlighted the complexities of uniting a galaxy as vast and diverse as the Milky Way. One of the most critical turning points came with the Emperor's decision to leave the front lines of the Crusade and return to Terra. While his reasons remained shrouded in mystery, he tasked Horus with leading the campaign as War Master. This decision marked a significant shift in the Crusade's leadership dynamics. Although Horus proved an exceptional commander, the Emperor's absence created a vacuum that allowed rivalries and mistrust among the Primarchs to fester. This period also saw the first subtle signs of corruption as chaos began to take an interest in the Imperium's growing power. The latter stages of the Crusade were characterized by a mix of triumph and growing tension. The Imperium had expanded to encompass millions of systems, bringing humanity closer to the dream of unity than ever before. Yet, the pressures of conquest and the inherent flaws of the Primarchs began to reveal cracks in the foundation. The compliance of some worlds came at a higher cost, with entire populations wiped out for their refusal to submit. The strain of constant warfare weighed heavily on the legions, leading to fractures within their ranks. Amid this backdrop, the seeds of the heresy were sown. Though the Primarchs outwardly remained loyal to the Emperor, whispers of discontent began to spread. Some questioned the imperial truth, while others resented the Emperor's secrecy and apparent abandonment of the Crusade. These doubts, combined with the manipulations of chaos, laid the groundwork for the catastrophic events that would follow. By the time the Great Crusade reached its zenith, the Imperium stood as the dominant power in the galaxy, its military might unmatched and its territories vast. Yet the forces that had driven its success, ambition, innovation, and the unwavering belief in the Emperor's vision, also harbored the potential for its undoing. The timeline of the Great Crusade, while a tale of unparalleled achievement, is also a prelude to the darkness that would engulf the galaxy in the Horus heresy. The Great Crusade was punctuated by pivotal moments and decisive choices, but none were more critical than the Emperor's decision to leave the forefront of the campaign and return to Terra. This single action, though seemingly a natural evolution of the Crusade, became a defining turning point that reshaped the dynamics of leadership and set into motion events that would reverberate across the galaxy. What appeared on the surface as a strategic decision masked deeper implications, both practical and symbolic, that influenced the future of the Imperium in profound ways. By the midpoint of the Crusade, the Imperium had grown into an enormous entity, spanning thousands of worlds and requiring increasingly complex governance. While the Emperor had personally led many of the early conquests, his focus began to shift toward consolidating the Imperium's structure to ensure its longevity. Unknown to most, he had embarked on a monumental secret project on Terra, the construction of the Imperial Webway. This endeavor aimed to secure humanity's future by creating a safe and reliable means of interstellar travel, independent of the dangers of the warp. The Emperor believed this was essential to free humanity from the grasp of chaos, yet his withdrawal left a void that would have far-reaching consequences. To ensure the Crusade's momentum, the Emperor appointed Horus Lupercal, his most trusted son, as War Master. This decision was momentous. Horus had proven himself an extraordinary leader, commanding the loyalty and admiration of his fellow Primarchs. However, the role of War Master also placed immense pressure on Horus, elevating him above his brothers and planting the seeds of rivalry and resentment among them. Some Primarchs, such as Lorgar and Angron, felt slighted by the Emperor's choice, while others harbored private doubts about Horus's capacity to bear such responsibility. The appointment of Horus as War Master marked the beginning of a subtle shift in the Crusade's character. The Emperor's direct presence had served as a unifying force, a symbol of infallible authority that could settle disputes and inspire loyalty. Without him on the front lines, fractures began to emerge among the Primarchs. Personal ambitions, ideological differences, and unresolved grievances came to the surface, creating an undercurrent of tension within the legions. This atmosphere of unease would later be exploited by the ruinous powers, whose whispers found fertile ground in the doubts and vulnerabilities of the Emperor's sons. Horus's ascension also altered the strategic priorities of the Crusade. As War Master, he had to balance the military expansion of the Imperium with the practicalities of managing an empire. This dual role placed him at odds with the demands of the Crusade's relentless pace. While Horus excelled in leadership, the immense scale of the task began to weigh heavily on him. The pressure to succeed, coupled with the growing discontent among his brothers, created cracks in his otherwise unassailable facade. These cracks, though imperceptible at first, would become chasms as external forces sought to exploit them. One of the most significant moments following the Emperor's departure was the Ullanor Triumph, a grand victory over the Orc warlord Urlak Urg during the Ullanor Crusade. This campaign was one of the largest and most challenging of the Crusade, requiring the combined might of multiple legions to bring the Orcs to heel. Horus's leadership during the campaign was exemplary, and the victory solidified his reputation as War Master. The Emperor himself presided over the triumph, honoring Horus and reaffirming his role as the leader of the Crusade. However, this event also reinforced the growing perception of Horus as the Emperor's chosen heir, further isolating him from his brothers. Another critical moment came with the compliance of Colchis, a world dominated by religious fervor under the rule of Lorgar. The Emperor's insistence on the imperial truth and rejection of all forms of worship clashed violently with Lorgar's devout nature. When Lorgar's zeal led him to establish a cult venerating the Emperor as a god, the Emperor responded harshly, ordering the Ultramarines to bring Colchis to compliance and chastising Lorgar for his actions. This humiliation deeply wounded Lorgar, setting him on a path of resentment that would ultimately lead to his embrace of chaos. The compliance of Colchis was not merely a military victory, but a philosophical defeat that highlighted the fragility of the imperial truth in the face of human nature. The Emperor's absence also left unresolved the question of the Primarch's role within the Imperium. Were they intended to be leaders of humanity, co-rulers with the Emperor, or mere tools of conquest? This ambiguity fueled conflicting interpretations among the Primarchs, each of whom viewed their purpose through the lens of their own experiences and desires. For some, like Guilliman, it was a call to create enduring governance. For others, like Angron and Curza, it was a source of bitterness, feeling exploited for their martial prowess without understanding or recognition of their suffering. As the Great Crusade advanced, the consequences of the Emperor's decision became increasingly apparent. The strain of leadership on Horus, the simmering rivalries among the Primarchs, and the ideological challenges of spreading the imperial truth created a volatile environment. While the Emperor's vision remained unshaken, the foundations of the Imperium were beginning to show signs of instability. The galaxy had been reclaimed at an astonishing pace, but the Imperium's unity was proving to be as fragile as the alliances it had forged through conquest. This turning point of the Great Crusade, defined by the Emperor's departure, Horus's elevation, and the shifting dynamics within the Imperium, illustrates the complexity of unifying humanity. The decisions made during this period were driven by necessity and ambition, but their outcomes revealed the inherent contradictions of the Emperor's vision. The Great Crusade was not just a campaign of conquest. It was a crucible that tested the strength of its ideals and the resolve of its leaders. These tests, though often victorious on the battlefield, exposed vulnerabilities that would later engulf the Imperium in the flames of heresy. The Great Crusade reshaped the galaxy, leaving a legacy that would echo across millennia. While it succeeded in its primary goal of uniting vast swaths of humanity under the banner of the Imperium, the consequences of this monumental campaign were as complex and multifaceted as the galaxy itself. The Crusade's aftermath set the stage for both the enduring power of the Imperium and the devastating conflicts that would follow. Triumph and tragedy intertwined as the dream of unity came at an unimaginable cost. One of the most immediate consequences was the sheer scale of the Imperium that emerged from the Crusade. By its conclusion, the Imperium spanned millions of star systems, encompassing countless worlds of varying levels of technological and cultural development. This vastness brought both strength and fragility. On one hand, the Imperium's size provided unmatched resources, manpower, and strategic depth. On the other hand, the sheer logistical challenge of governing and defending such an enormous empire strained even the advanced capabilities of the imperial bureaucracy. The administratum, born during the Crusade to manage its logistics, expanded into an unwieldy behemoth that struggled to maintain cohesion across the Imperium's far-flung territories. The Great Crusade also left a deep ideological imprint. The imperial truth, the philosophy propagated during the campaign, sought to eliminate superstition and religious worship in favor of reason and scientific progress. While it initially brought a sense of purpose and unity, its enforcement often bred resentment and rebellion. Many worlds forcibly converted to the imperial truth retained their suppressed beliefs, leading to underground movements or outright defiance. The suppression of religious practices, especially on worlds where faith had been a source of identity, created cultural tensions that would later erupt into unrest. Perhaps the most profound consequence was the fragile unity among the forces of the Imperium itself. The Great Crusade had been as much about consolidating power as it was about conquering the galaxy. While the Emperor's vision was grand, the execution of that vision revealed the underlying tensions between its key players. The Primarchs, despite their immense capabilities, were not immune to human flaws. Rivalries, jealousy, and ideological differences that simmered during the Crusade persisted into its aftermath. The Emperor's departure from active leadership, combined with the elevation of Horus to War Master, exacerbated these divisions. What had once been a united force under the Emperor's direct guidance now became a fragmented hierarchy with conflicting priorities and personal ambitions. The consequences of the Crusade extended beyond the Imperium's internal struggles. The galaxy itself bore the scars of humanity's relentless expansion. Xenos species were driven to extinction or subjugation on an unprecedented scale, forever altering the balance of power. The Aeldari, already in decline following the birth of Slaanesh, were further diminished by their losses to the advancing Imperium. The Orcs, though resilient, suffered massive defeats, weakening their major war bands. Yet, the destruction of these Xenos empires came at a price. Their survivors, driven to desperation, adapted and became more elusive, ensuring that they would remain a persistent threat to the Imperium for millennia. The Imperium's relationship with the warp and chaos was another critical consequence of the Crusade. The Emperor's decision to suppress knowledge of chaos and the true nature of the warp created a dangerous blind spot. While the Imperial truth dismissed the warp as a mere tool for interstellar travel, the reality was far more insidious. The ruinous powers, sensing the growing power of the Imperium, began to influence its key figures subtly. The Great Crusade, despite its military and ideological successes, failed to eradicate the root causes of chaos's influence. This failure would have catastrophic repercussions, as the seeds of corruption sown during the Crusade eventually blossomed into full-blown heresy. Economically and socially, the Crusade brought both prosperity and upheaval. Many worlds, liberated from isolation and chaos, experienced a renaissance of trade, culture, and technological advancement under imperial rule. Yet, this prosperity was unevenly distributed. Frontier worlds and recently compliant systems often bore the brunt of the Imperium's demands, providing troops, resources, and infrastructure for the ongoing campaign. The process of compliance frequently left worlds devastated, their populations decimated, and their economies shattered. While some worlds thrived, others became little more than resource hubs for the Imperial war machine. The legacy of the Great Crusade also reshaped humanity's identity. The Imperium's narrative of unity and destiny inspired generations, creating a sense of shared purpose among disparate populations. Yet, this identity was deeply flawed, built on a foundation of conquest, suppression, and uncompromising authority. The Crusade's successes were achieved at the cost of individual freedoms and cultural diversity. Compliance often meant the destruction of unique traditions, replaced by the homogenizing force of the imperial truth. Over time, this erasure of identity created a sense of loss and discontent among many of the Imperium's subjects. The withdrawal of the Emperor from the forefront of the Crusade to focus on the Webway project left a leadership vacuum that the Imperium struggled to fill. Horus's appointment as War Master initially brought continuity, but it also shifted the balance of power among the Primarchs and their legions. The resulting rivalries and mistrust among the Primarchs created an unstable foundation for the Imperium's future. The tension between central authority and individual ambition, already evident during the Crusade, became even more pronounced after its conclusion. In the broader galactic context, the Great Crusade reawakened dormant threats and sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The Necrons, disturbed from their tomb worlds, began to stir, while chaos took an increasingly active interest in the Imperium's expansion. The galaxy, though seemingly brought to heel, remained a cauldron of unresolved dangers. The Crusade had united humanity, but it had also drawn the attention of forces that sought to destroy it. The ultimate consequence of the Great Crusade was its role as a prelude to the Horus heresy. The divisions, resentments, and ambitions that had festered during the campaign became the catalysts for the most devastating civil war in human history. The very tools that had made the Crusade possible, the Primarchs, the Astartes, and the Imperial Truth, became instruments of destruction. The galaxy-spanning empire built during the Crusade would be plunged into chaos, its hard-won unity shattered in an instant. In the end, the Great Crusade achieved its stated goal of uniting humanity, but the cost was immeasurable. Its consequences, both immediate and far-reaching, left the Imperium with a legacy of contradictions. Strength and fragility, hope and despair, triumph and ruin. The dream of unity became a reality, but it was a reality built on fragile foundations, destined to be tested by the fires of heresy and war. The technological and tactical innovations of the Great Crusade were unparalleled, forming the backbone of the Imperium's galaxy-spanning conquests. From ancient devices recovered from the Dark Age of technology to newly forged instruments of war, the Crusade relied on an unprecedented fusion of human ingenuity and rediscovered relics to reclaim the stars. Coupled with the Emperor's strategic brilliance and the martial genius of the Primarchs, these tools and methods enabled the Imperium to overcome formidable adversaries and expand at an astonishing rate. At the heart of the Imperium's technological power were the Mechanicum of Mars and their forge worlds. These techno-religious enclaves maintained humanity's industrial might, constructing vast fleets, weaponry, and war engines essential to the Crusade. The Mechanicum's mastery of arcane technologies, though rooted in superstition and ritual, allowed them to produce wonders such as the towering Titans, massive war machines capable of annihilating entire armies. The Titans, operated by specially trained princeps and moderati, served as a symbol of the Imperium's might, their presence alone often enough to compel worlds to submit. The Mechanicum's expertise extended to the production of spacecraft, with the creation of massive warships that formed the backbone of the Imperial Navy. Vessels like the Gloriana-class battleships were marvels of engineering, equipped with devastating macro cannons, plasma batteries, and void shields. These ships allowed the Imperium to project its power across the vast distances of the galaxy, providing the logistical support needed for planetary invasions and sustained campaigns. The Legiones Astartes, the Emperor's Space Marines, embodied the pinnacle of genetic engineering and biomechanical augmentation. Each Space Marine was a product of the Emperor's genius, enhanced through a grueling process that transformed ordinary humans into superhuman warriors. Their power armor, a marvel of adaptive engineering, combined advanced materials and self-sustaining systems to protect its wearer while enhancing strength and mobility. The iconic bolter, the standard weapon of the Astartes, fired mass-reactive rounds capable of tearing through the toughest armor. These warriors were the spearhead of the Crusade, using their unmatched physical capabilities and advanced equipment to shatter enemy defenses. The tactical doctrines of the Space Marine legions reflected the personalities and philosophies of their Primarchs. The Ultramarines, under Robert Guilliman, emphasized adaptability and precision, employing combined arms strategies to achieve overwhelming victories. The White Scars, led by Jagatai Khan, excelled in rapid, high-mobility warfare, striking hard and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Meanwhile, the World Eaters, driven by Angron's unbridled fury, specialized in brutal close-quarters combat, relying on their sheer ferocity to overcome any foe. This diversity of tactics allowed the Imperium to adapt to the wide range of challenges it faced during the Crusade. Alongside the Astartes, the Imperial Army played a vital role, fielding countless soldiers and vehicles to support the legions. The Army's forces included specialized regiments equipped with tanks like the Lehman Russ battle tank, named after the Primarch of the Space Wolves. These armored vehicles provided critical firepower and mobility, enabling the Imperium to secure territory and hold strategic positions. The Imperial Army's ability to deploy en masse ensured that the Imperium could maintain control over conquered worlds, a role the Astartes were not designed to fulfill. Psykers also played a significant role in the Crusade, serving as both weapons and tools of navigation. Astropaths, trained by the adeptus Astra Telepathica, allowed the Imperium to maintain communication across vast distances, while navigators guided fleets through the perilous currents of the warp. Battle Psyker units were employed on the front lines, wielding devastating psychic powers that could decimate enemy ranks. However, the use of Psykers came with inherent risks, as their abilities exposed them to the dangers of chaos. The Emperor's oversight was critical in ensuring that Psykers were controlled and their powers directed toward the Imperium's goals. The tactical deployment of these resources was as vital as the technologies themselves. The Great Crusade was a masterclass in strategic coordination, with entire sectors of the galaxy conquered through meticulously planned campaigns. The Emperor and his Primarchs employed overwhelming force when necessary, but they also demonstrated an ability to adapt to unexpected challenges. When confronted with the labyrinthine webway defenses of the Aldari, or the relentless swarms of orcs, the Imperium's leaders modified their strategies to exploit enemy weaknesses, ensuring victory even in the face of adversity. The doctrine of compliance was central to the Crusade's tactics. Worlds were given the opportunity to join the Imperium peacefully, provided they accepted the imperial truth and submitted to its authority. Those that refused faced the full might of the Imperium's war machine. This dual approach of diplomacy and conquest allowed the Imperium to expand rapidly, though it often left a legacy of resentment and rebellion among subjugated populations. Another crucial tactical innovation was the use of mass teleportation technology. The Mechanicum's rediscovery of this ancient capability enabled the rapid deployment of troops and war machines to the battlefield. This technology was particularly effective during planetary assaults, where Space Marines and Terminator units could be teleported directly into the heart of enemy strongholds, bypassing conventional defenses. Despite its technological and tactical superiority, the Imperium's reliance on ancient knowledge presented its own challenges. Much of its technology was poorly understood, maintained through ritual and dogma rather than true scientific inquiry. This reliance on relics of the past meant that innovation was stifled, leaving the Imperium vulnerable to unexpected challenges. The Mechanicum's obsession with preserving sacred technology often hindered the development of new solutions, creating a paradox in which the Imperium's greatest strength also became its greatest limitation. Ultimately, the technologies and tactics of the Great Crusade defined an era of unparalleled conquest and expansion. They enabled humanity to reclaim its place among the stars, but they also carried the seeds of future conflicts. The same tools that brought unity to the galaxy would later be turned against the Imperium during the Horus heresy, proving that even the most advanced technologies and ingenious strategies could not shield humanity from its own flaws. The Great Crusade was shaped by a pantheon of extraordinary figures whose deeds and decisions left an indelible mark on the galaxy. Each brought unique strengths, philosophies, and flaws to the monumental task of unifying humanity, and their interplay defined the character of the Crusade. From the visionary emperor to the larger-than-life primarchs and unsung heroes who worked behind the scenes, the Great Crusade was as much a story of individuals as it was a tale of galactic conquest. The Emperor of Mankind was the central figure of the Crusade, a being of immeasurable power and inscrutable purpose. His unparalleled psychic abilities and intellect enabled him to unite Terra and envision an Imperium spanning the stars. Yet, the Emperor's enigmatic nature often left his intentions unclear, even to his closest allies. He was not merely a warrior, but a statesman, scientist, and philosopher. His doctrine of the imperial truth rejected superstition and sought to elevate humanity through reason and science. However, his aloofness and secrecy, especially regarding his Webway project, sowed confusion and discontent among those who served him, laying the groundwork for future strife. Among the Emperor's creations, the Primarchs were the most prominent. Each of these genetically engineered sons embodied a fragment of his genius and ambition, yet they were also deeply flawed. Horus Lupercal, the first Primarch to be discovered, was the Emperor's most trusted lieutenant and eventually named War Master. Horus's charisma and military acumen made him a natural leader, earning him the loyalty of both his brothers and the Legiones Astartes. Yet, the immense burden of leadership and his eventual fall from grace would have devastating consequences. Roboute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, was a paragon of organization and governance. His realm of Ultramar became a model of imperial efficiency, demonstrating that the Imperium was more than just a military force. Guilliman's ability to balance warfare with statecraft set him apart as a stabilizing influence during the Crusade. However, his methodical nature sometimes clashed with the more impulsive Primarchs, highlighting the ideological diversity within the imperial ranks. Sanguinius, the angelic Primarch of the Blood Angels, was both a warrior and a beacon of hope. His nobility and courage inspired all who fought alongside him, and his charisma made him one of the most beloved figures of the Crusade. Yet, Sanguinius carried a dark secret, the genetic flaw within his legion, the Red Thirst, which threatened to overshadow their glory. His ability to lead despite this burden exemplified his resilience and dedication. Lion L. Johnson of the Dark Angels was a figure shrouded in mystery. A master strategist and tactician, his prowess in battle was matched only by his enigmatic personality. The Lion's secretive nature often isolated him from his brothers, yet his effectiveness as a commander was unquestionable. His actions during the Crusade demonstrated the necessity of adaptability and pragmatism, though his methods sometimes bred mistrust. Leman Russ, the Primarch of the Space Wolves, represented unyielding loyalty and ferocity. A warrior at heart, Russ embodied the savage strength required to break the Imperium's enemies. However, his blunt demeanor and tendency to act on instinct often led to clashes with his more cerebral brothers. Despite this, Russ's unwavering devotion to the Emperor made him a cornerstone of the Crusade's success. The lesser-known figures of the Great Crusade were equally important. Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's closest advisor, played a vital role in maintaining the Imperium's logistical and administrative stability. A mortal among superhumans, Malcador's intellect and loyalty made him indispensable. He oversaw the creation of institutions such as the Inquisition and the Astra Telepathica, laying the groundwork for the Imperium's long-term survival. Euphrati Keeler, initially a remembrancer assigned to chronicle the Crusade, emerged as a pivotal figure in the spiritual undercurrents of the era. Witnessing the horrors of chaos firsthand, she became one of the first to venerate the Emperor as a god, a belief that would later shape the imperial cult. Her transformation from chronicler to prophet highlighted the Crusade's unintended consequences, as the rejection of superstition clashed with the human need for faith. Other notable figures included Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists, whose unshakable discipline made him the Imperium's foremost defender. His mastery of fortification and siege warfare ensured the Crusade's gains were secure. Similarly, Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands exemplified the fusion of human ingenuity and mechanical precision, though his relentless pursuit of perfection often alienated him from his peers. Even among the Astartes themselves, individual heroes rose to prominence. Sigismund of the Imperial Fists became a legend for his prowess in combat, earning the title of Emperor's Champion. Garvia Loken, a captain of the Luna Wolves, embodied the ideals of honor and integrity, even as the Crusade descended into darker chapters. These warriors, while overshadowed by the Primarchs, were instrumental in the Imperium's victories. Beyond the Imperium, the enemies faced during the Crusade also produced figures of note. The Aldari Farseers, struggling to protect their dwindling empire, demonstrated a tragic nobility in their resistance. The Orc warlord Urlach Urg, though ultimately defeated, represented the relentless threats the Imperium would continue to face. These adversaries, while not part of the Imperium's hierarchy, shaped the Crusade through their defiance. The Great Crusade was a theater of grand personalities, each contributing to its victories and its flaws. From the Emperor's enigmatic vision to the diverse qualities of the Primarchs and the resilience of lesser figures, these individuals created a tapestry of ambition, heroism, and tragedy. Their legacies would not only define the Crusade, but also shape the fate of the Imperium in the turbulent centuries to come. The Great Crusade's legacy was not only built by its most renowned figures, but also by the enigmatic, unsung, and even the divisive personalities whose contributions shaped its successes and failures. These individuals, often operating in the shadows or acting against the grain of conventional expectation, added depth and complexity to the Crusade's unfolding narrative. Their actions influenced not only their contemporaries, but also the very fabric of the Imperium that emerged from the era. Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter, was one of the most controversial Primarchs to serve during the Great Crusade. Known for his brutal methods of enforcing compliance, Curze ruled through fear and terror, leaving a legacy of dread wherever his legion, the Night Lords, was deployed. His vision of justice, warped by his traumatic upbringing on Nostromo, stood in stark contrast to the ideals of other Primarchs like Guilliman or Sanguinius. Despite his effectiveness in crushing resistance, his methods alienated both his brothers and the Imperium's populace, creating an aura of unease around him. His actions foreshadowed the darkness that would later consume him and his legion. Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns, was a figure of unmatched intellect and psychic power. As a scholar and seeker of knowledge, Magnus exemplified the Emperor's aspirations for humanity's intellectual potential. However, his relentless pursuit of forbidden knowledge and his over-reliance on the warp placed him at odds with the Imperial truth's denial of the supernatural. Magnus's hubris and his eventual tragic downfall symbolized the dangers of overstepping the boundaries imposed by the Emperor, as well as the vulnerabilities inherent in the Imperium's own contradictions. Corvus Corax, the Raven Guard's Primarch, brought a unique perspective to the Crusade. His focus on guerrilla tactics, subterfuge, and precise strikes made him a master of asymmetric warfare. Corax's disdain for unnecessary brutality and his emphasis on liberating oppressed populations set him apart from more aggressive Primarchs like Angron or Curze. However, his idealism was often tested by the harsh realities of the Crusade, forcing him to make difficult decisions that haunted him long after the battles were won. Perturabo, the Primarch of the Iron Warriors, was a genius of siege warfare and fortification. Despite his immense strategic value, Perturabo's bitterness and resentment toward his perceived lack of recognition alienated him from his brothers and the Imperium at large. His pragmatic but ruthless approach to warfare often clashed with the idealistic goals of the Crusade, highlighting the growing divide between the Emperor's vision and the methods employed to achieve it. Malcador the Sigillite, though often overshadowed by the Primarchs and the Emperor himself, was a pivotal figure whose influence extended into every aspect of the Crusade. As the Emperor's most trusted advisor, Malcador acted as the glue that held the Imperium's vast bureaucracy together. His tireless efforts to establish institutions like the Inquisition and the Council of Terra ensured that the Imperium could endure the logistical challenges of galactic governance. Malcador's unwavering loyalty and pragmatic wisdom made him an essential counterbalance to the often impulsive and ego-driven actions of the Primarchs. Jaghatai Khan, the enigmatic leader of the White Scars, embodied the duality of the Crusade's ethos. His love of freedom and disdain for rigid hierarchies were reflected in the high-speed, hit-and-run tactics of his legion. The Khan's independent nature often led to misunderstandings with his brothers, but his effectiveness in battle was undeniable. His ability to navigate the cultural complexities of compliance, particularly on worlds with deeply entrenched traditions, demonstrated his diplomatic acumen and respect for humanity's diversity. Other key contributors included the Remembrancers, tasked with chronicling the Crusade's achievements and spreading the imperial truth. While their role seemed secondary to the military campaigns, figures like Solomon Voss and Ignis Carcassy provided a human perspective on the monumental events unfolding around them. Their works preserved the memory of the Crusade's triumphs and tragedies, even as they occasionally ran afoul of the Imperium's propaganda machinery. Ezekiel Abaddon, a rising star within the Luna Wolves, later the Sons of Horus, exemplified the ambition and martial prowess that defined the Astartes. As the first captain of Horus's legion, Abaddon's loyalty to his Primarch was unshakable. However, his growing pride and ruthless determination foreshadowed the choices he would make in the wake of the Crusade. Abaddon's story served as a microcosm of the larger tensions brewing within the legions, where unwavering loyalty often collided with personal ambition and ideological rifts. On the fringes of the Imperium, rogue traders and navigators also played critical roles in expanding the Imperium's reach. Figures like Janeth Elacasta, a rogue trader renowned for her daring explorations, brought new worlds into compliance, often acting as the Imperium's first contact with isolated human colonies. Navigators such as Morven Elshar ensured that fleets could traverse the warp safely, their unique psychic abilities critical to the success of the Crusade. While often overlooked, these individuals operated in the shadows, their contributions vital to maintaining the Imperium's momentum. The antagonists of the Crusade, while enemies of the Imperium, were no less remarkable. Eldari Farseers like Eldrad Ulthran fought tirelessly to protect the remnants of their ancient empire, their prescient abilities allowing them to counter the Imperium's advances with calculated precision. Orc war bosses like the infamous Gorklaw united disparate war bands into vast hordes, providing the Imperium with some of its fiercest battles. Even chaos, though lurking in the shadows during much of the Crusade, began to subtly influence the course of events, its agents planting seeds of corruption that would later bear bitter fruit. The Great Crusade was not merely a story of conquest. It was a stage for the interplay of extraordinary personalities, each driven by their own motivations and shaped by their unique experiences. These individuals, whether heroes, villains, or something in between, defined the character of the Crusade and left legacies that would resonate far beyond their time. Their triumphs, flaws, and choices embodied the paradoxes of the Imperium, a vision of unity achieved through division, and a dream of progress shadowed by inevitable decay. The Great Crusade ended not with a triumphant declaration of unity, but with a galaxy on the precipice of disaster. Its conclusion marked the transformation of humanity's greatest ambition into its darkest tragedy. The dream of an Imperium united by reason, strength, and progress devolved into a fragile empire teetering under the weight of its contradictions. As the fires of the Horus heresy ignited, the final legacy of the Great Crusade became a cautionary tale of ambition, hubris, and the fragile nature of unity. The Imperium forged by the Crusade stood as a monument to human perseverance and ingenuity. Spanning millions of worlds, it represented the culmination of millennia of struggle, offering humanity a beacon of hope in an otherwise hostile galaxy. Yet, the very methods that achieved this victory sowed the seeds of future strife. The relentless expansion and the imposition of compliance left scars on conquered worlds, many of which simmered with unrest beneath the surface. The brutality required to enforce the imperial truth alienated populations, and the suppression of cultural identities created a sense of loss that lingered even after the banners of the Imperium were raised. The ideological foundations of the Crusade, the rejection of superstition and the elevation of reason, faced their own contradictions. Despite the Emperor's insistence on the imperial truth, the remnants of old beliefs and the allure of chaos persisted. The very act of denying the existence of gods left humanity vulnerable to the manipulations of the ruinous powers who thrived on the cracks in the Imperium's facade. The Emperor's secrecy about the true nature of chaos and his own plans exacerbated this vulnerability, leaving even his most loyal followers ill-equipped to resist the temptations of the warp. The withdrawal of the Emperor to Terra, coupled with Horus's elevation to War Master, marked the beginning of a new and volatile chapter. While the Crusade had once been unified by the Emperor's direct leadership, the shifting dynamics among the Primarchs created a web of rivalries and resentments. The cracks that formed during this time were exploited by the Whispers of Chaos, whose insidious influence turned brother against brother. The galaxy that had been so painstakingly reclaimed now stood on the brink of a civil war that would dwarf all previous conflicts. For the heroes of the Great Crusade, the legacy of their achievements was bittersweet. The Primarchs, the Emperor's own sons, became symbols of both the Crusade's triumphs and its failures. Their diverse personalities and methods, once assets to the Imperium's expansion, became sources of division. Some, like Guilliman and Sanguinius, remained steadfast in their loyalty, while others, such as Cursey and Perturabo, succumbed to bitterness and despair. The Astartes legions, forged to be humanity's protectors, were now instruments of its self-destruction. The galaxy itself bore the scars of the Crusade. Entire species were eradicated, ancient cultures extinguished, and once thriving worlds reduced to ashes. While the Imperium expanded its borders, it did so at a cost that could never be fully calculated. The Aldari, Orcs, Necrons, and countless other Xenos empires, though diminished, remained threats, their survival a testament to the Imperium's inability to truly extinguish its enemies. Even humanity's own colonies, isolated during the Age of Strife, bore the marks of their forced reintegration into the Imperium, many left bitter or broken by the process of compliance. The culmination of the Great Crusade was not a singular event, but a gradual unraveling. The Alinor triumph, often celebrated as the pinnacle of the Crusade's success, was also its harbinger of doom. The Emperor's departure from the front lines created a void that no single figure could fill, and the seeds of dissent planted during the Crusade began to grow. The galaxy-wide effort to reclaim humanity's lost glory had stretched the Imperium to its limits, both logistically and ideologically. The true epilogue of the Great Crusade came not with its formal end, but with the eruption of the Horus heresy. This civil war, sparked by the betrayal of the Emperor's favored son, consumed the Imperium in fire and blood. The very tools of the Crusade, its warriors, technologies, and institutions, became weapons in a conflict that would redefine the galaxy. The heresy shattered the unity achieved during the Crusade, leaving the Imperium scarred and weakened, its dream of a united humanity forever tainted. Yet, even amid the destruction, the spirit of the Great Crusade endured. The Imperium, though battered, survived, its foundations resilient enough to withstand even the greatest of internal betrayals. The sacrifices made during the Crusade, both noble and tragic, laid the groundwork for humanity's continued existence in a galaxy that remained hostile and unforgiving. The ideals of the imperial truth, though compromised, lived on in the hearts of those who still believed in the Emperor's vision. The Great Crusade was, at its core, a paradox. It was a triumph of human ambition and a testament to the cost of that ambition. It united humanity while sowing the seeds of its division. It reclaimed the stars but left them forever scarred. Its legacy is both an inspiration and a warning, a reminder of the heights humanity can achieve and the depths to which it can fall. As the dust of the Crusade settled and the fires of the heresy burned, the galaxy entered a new age of uncertainty. The dream of the Great Crusade remained, a shadow of what it once was, yet a spark of hope endured. The Imperium of man, forged in the crucible of conquest, stood defiant against the encroaching darkness, a fragile bulwark against a galaxy that would never know peace.